Hi, my friends. Welcome to another episode of The Salt Circle. Thank you for joining for, another week of introspection and self-care. My name is Daniela. I am your host. Um, every Monday we discuss self-sorcery, shadow work, understanding what our inner child is, what our shadow is, meeting that hidden layer or layers of ourselves, meeting the parts of ourselves that we disown or pretend aren't there or are ashamed of, and we bring them out to the forefront. We integrate them with the parts of ourselves or the persona that is outward. Um, And Wednesdays we talk about death, dying, and bereavement, but right now we're going to focus on shadow work and this episode. So, welcome. If you're new here, really excited to have you. This is a huge transformative journey that you're going on, and I'm really proud of you. I don't care what part of your healing journey you're at, where you are in your personal evolution, what you have to do to preserve yourself, but you're doing it and you're here and you're putting in the work. And I see you. I see what you're doing, and it's hard work and it sucks, and you're still doing it because you got it, you got that. You got what it takes. You're a tough cookie. You got moxie. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I think that should be, celebrated. Um, Shadow work is a really tough thing to do. It's a lot of uncovering buried personal secrets or inner turmoil that you pretend isn't there. And in meeting our shadow, in going inside ourselves and really understanding what we are comprised of in terms of core memories, survival instincts, the conclusions we jump to, the way we, perceive a lot of situations. That is not something that has just happened out of nowhere. For example, I'm a fucking people pleaser. At least I'm trying to not be. And I wasn't just a people pleaser just one day. I just woke up and like, yeah, let me just, here's my new, phase that I'll go through. That it doesn't just, these things don't just happen. These behaviors, if we're someone who's always fighting, who's always fawning, if we're someone who is very impulsive or pushes people away, whatever the behavior or pattern is not something that just popped up like a fucking pimple on your ass in the middle of the night. This is, I was a parent pleaser when I was a little kid. I wanted to be liked and cared for so much that I grew up saying what I thought people would want to hear. And I thought that was the right thing to do because not only did I see other adults acting that way, but a part of me, and I always thought of this part of me, I'll get into this a little bit more later, but I always thought about this part of me as, oh, I'm manipulative. I'm just a bad person because I knew by, placating people or playing to, what they want to hear is more likely to give me the outcome I want, not being hurt, being included in activities, whatever the situation was. So that grew with me. That came along with me. Almost like a security blanket that was internal. Because as a child, if you're not, automatically and outwardly always protected or in, safe environments, you're going to try to do everything you can to put yourself in a safe environment, That's why little teeny tiny kittens and little teeny tiny puppies and little teeny tiny animal babies, they have really, really sharp claws and teeth like needles, because when you have to really, you can't see, you can't walk, you can't do anything, and you need that sustenance, sometimes you really have to fight tooth and nail just to get what you need. And, as little kittens and puppies grow up, they lose those, little needle teeth. They don't need them anymore. So shadow work is kind of looking at parts of yourself like those little puppy teeth, like those milking teeth that are really, really fucking sharp. Came in handy when it was really, really necessary. It ensured your survival. So we have to be grateful that we were able to help ourselves in that way. And I try to look at, the times that I would blame myself or tell myself like, oh wow, you're a psychopath, you're manipulative, like you're la, 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 la." Like, maybe you're just a people pleaser because you didn't know how else to ensure, you know, uh consistent environments, or whatever you want to call it. And while that's very valid, sometimes I think a problem with people who have gone through really tumultuous or chaotic, chronically dysfunctional situations is that when they come out of it, it's hard to grieve the things that got you out of it. You know what I mean? If you had to be, you know, a people pleaser and kiss people's asses, and you hated that about yourself, and now that you don't have to do it, instead of beating yourself up like, oh my god, I hate that I had to do that, I feel so low, I feel like a servant, I feel shitty, instead of feeling like that, while it's valid to feel like that, you are the only thing that is going to change that narrative. No disembodied voice is going to be like, well, little did she know she was wrong, and she actually, like, nothing is going to, really tell you what you need to hear like you are. So, you might not even believe it, but I really do believe that spoken word and what we say out loud, curses, spells, like it's really tied into the intention or into the energy that we put out in verbal or written language. So change the narrative and be like, wow, I'm so grateful I don't have to be that character anymore. I'm really impressed that I was able to act that way for that long, despite how uncomfortable it made me. When you start to change that narrative and praise yourself, it makes it easier to mourn or to disconnect from those phases or those, sheddings, those, those encases that, those husks that you leave behind as you keep transforming. You'll keep going through things that feel like the end of the world, like, how am I going to get through this? And then you get through it. And then you're so much more resilient, you know what I mean? But there's a definite, ego death, and there's a definite mourning that comes with meeting your inner self and seeing the parts of yourself that, like, shit, like, I hated that I was XYZ when I was living on the streets and blah, 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 blah. But now that I'm not in that position, I'm so inspired by my tenacity. And you don't even have to fucking believe it at first, but just changing that narrative a little by little, like, I wasn't a psychopath little child. I am just really astounded that I was that smart when I was little. Like, that shows how adaptable I was. And when you look at the tragedy in a way that, you want to almost romanticize yourself, like, imagine like some person, some perfect person that you've always wanted comes into your life and tells you all these things you've always wanted to hear about yourself. They know you exactly the way you know yourself, they've been through it all with you, and they tell you the thing. You have to say that to yourself. Trust me, it feels stupid, but the next time you're getting into that self-deprecating talk that is going to hinder authentic meeting yourself and the genuine availability of your inner self to come out, because you can't feel judged. You can't shame yourself and expect you to really like open up to yourself. Your subconscious wants to protect your inner child, and you can't talk shit about your inner child. You can't perpetuate what all the bullies of your life have said to you, because you know for example, I was always told that I was like ungrateful and lazy growing up. And I don't know, I was like a little fucking kid. I don't know. And now, as an adult in my 30s, whenever Sunday rolls around or whenever it's like a holiday, or I'm sick and I like physically can't do anything, I just tell myself, like, oh my God, I'm a lazy piece of shit. I don't care about my hobbies because I would be doing them if I cared, and I'm ungrateful and blah blah blah, blah whatever. And where does that even come from? That's not my original thought, So I think a lot of our identity also comes in the hurt that we've had inflicted on us, but also the hurt that we almost hold on to, you know? So that kind of brings me to like the meat of what I really wanted to discuss. This sorry, and I get jumbled a lot and I get very sidetracked, and I'm trying not to. Um but this episode I really kind of wanted to explain how by meeting ourselves and really breaking these patterns and talking to ourselves almost like from a third party, love letter, it you I don't even know how to articulate properly. So I'm just going to just get into it. This chunk is about how this is what started, I think, my real serious shadow work journey. Because I've always been like, for the last like 10 years, like trying to like just understand myself and reconcile real life with the delusions and insanity that I grew up with. It took a lot of time of just really observing and getting away from everything to understand what was real, what was me, and what was residue of dysfunction. Um so a couple of years ago, and I'll try to keep this as concise as possible because trust me, it's insane. And it spans since I was in high school, I guess. But, a couple of years ago, I was living with my best friend, me and my friend, and I'll just call him Z. Me and Z have been best friends since high school. I felt like he and I knew each other on such like a best friend level. You know, I don't even know. Like I felt like he was my brother. We would joke that we were each other's like siblings because how close we were. And, growing up through really tumultuous times, especially at the end of high school, that's such a transformative period as it is. Not to mention, anything else that could be going on in the background. But a couple of years ago, we were living together, and, we moved to Colorado, and we're just like, yeah, like it's easier to get a place with, just more than by yourself. So like let's move in together, grab like a fucking really cool house, whatever. And just like be best friends living in Colorado. Like who the fuck cares, right? Start a life there, like be established, but he was thinking about like moving or whatever. And it's like we have so much time. We were just living our lives, right? And I've always been very protective of my friends, and a lot, if not all of my very close friends have turned out to be, drug addicts, career criminals, or just doomed. I don't even know how else to put it, which is really unfortunate. And so Zycal, whoops, whatever, that's his name. So when he had his episodes of either relapse, he did do drugs because he, also was schizophrenic. So if about schizophrenia, if they're schizophrenic, they're more likely than not going to use drugs, and that's going to be more compounded by if they're a veteran or not, which he was. So I've been through so many situations where he had to get, institutionalized, where he went missing, where he completely stopped taking his medication and started doing drugs again and just lost touch with reality. That happened many times over the course of our friendship since high school to when we were living together in Colorado. But for up until that point for a couple of years he seemed stable, he seemed like everything was fine, like everything was okay. He made the conscious choice to move to this new state and like just whatever. And long story short, he ended up going missing while he relapsed on drugs and stopped taking his medication and I felt so insane with worry and with responsibility. I felt like I let my friend just vanish. He is alone in this state. He has no family that cares about him. And he doesn't even have a car. I have no I would I had no idea how to react to the fact that he just was gone. And I tried calling him, I tried waiting for him, I tried, checking on social media, asking mutual friends like, "Hey, have you heard from our friend?" He was gone. To the point where I honestly thought he was dead. So after, a couple of weeks I decided I was like, "Hey, I have a feeling he's in California because he linked up with an old flame and that's where he visited the last couple of times he went out of state." So I was like, maybe he's there. And when I tried to reach out to her, she was very hostile. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I felt almost paranoid that she had something to do. She was holding my friend captive or something. And I really was like, you know what? I'll just quit my job. I will take the dogs. I'll drive to California. I'll figure out where she lives. I know. I know. But I felt, he was the last of my friends that was remaining. Everyone else was either in prison, a drug addict, or just dead. Like I felt so protective of him, especially because he was ill. And we had this inside joke that when World War III happened, or when, the world came to an end, and all the pharmaceuticals were not manufactured anymore because the world's over, there's no more pills, there's nothing. And he's like, without being medicated for X amount of years, I'll probably truly just be completely insane. And I'm like, don't worry, my friend, I'll keep you. I'll fucking keep you. No worries. Like you'll be like my bodyguard zombie crazy person friend on a leash. Like, well, that's fine. I'm not worried. Like we just always had this running joke, like sometimes when I would like have like a super manic meltdown and I would like shave my head off and like pierce my nose and like change my name to Bert. And he's like, "Don't worry, like I'll keep you. Whatever, you're still my friend." Like, so I was just like, "Oh my God, my friend is just gone. He might be in trouble." Every time he's gone missing, it's always been like the last time he went missing. Uh, his orbital was shattered and like he had oh my gosh, all this stuff. And I really remember because I loved my job. I had a really cool house that I was renting. My dogs were getting old and my car was falling to shit. And I was just like, I don't even have the money really to to do what? To get to California? That's a huge ass state. Yeah, I could go to La Jolla or wherever the fuck, but what, just start calling his name down Main Street? And the thing with codependency, or the thing with trauma bonds, the thing with people pleasing or hyper fixating on a certain expectation or outcome is that you're gripping it so hard because it's not really there. It's smoke. It's vapor in the air. It's not there. It's not yours. It's you have to, and that was really hard for me because I really took a really hard breath and I was like, I can't go find him. He's missing and he did it to himself and he needs to face the consequences. And the consequences really could be like super fucking dire. Like I might never see him again. I really thought he died or something. Especially when weeks turned into months, turned into years and nothing. This was my best friend ever. And then whatever. So we're going to stop there and, digest that. I still almost feel pangs of irrational responsibility. Like I should have called the VA and said, my friend is not doing well. I need help. I should have reached out to his mom, who I don't think would have given a fuck, but at least it would have been more hands on deck. Maybe I should have been more upfront with him about being afraid for his own safety. Maybe, like I feel like, of course hindsight is 2020, but I think also, and this is where the shadow work comes in. Like, why is that such an intense feeling to take care of my friend, to keep him forever, to make sure he's fine? He can't even take care of himself. The government has declared him an invalid, more or less, like, but I'm going to fucking protect him and make sure he's fine for the next 80 fucking years. That wasn't even a question in my head. I was like, I got my friend, never ending friendship right here. Let's do it. And it's the same reason I would do the same thing in my actual romantic relationships. Every person I've dated up until that point was someone I had to put in so much work into. It was so inequitable. These other people were like not able to hold down jobs, have cars, had, no place to live. They were completely unstable. And I felt like, oh, these poor guys. Well, I can help. Well, I feel bad. Well, I get to go sleep in a house. Like I could at least let him sleep in my living room, at least for a night, help the guy out. All right. Well, why is that? Why has this been a pattern, right? Okay. Well, I think obviously my dad, lifelong drug addict, grandparents enabled the fuck out of him. And I remember, many times as a little kid, my grandma would say, like, hey, you can't ask your dad for lunch money. It was $2 fucking back then in the 90s. She's like, you can't ask your dad for lunch money because you make him feel bad because he doesn't have a job. Your dad is sick, so don't ask him for money. And I think that's one of the first things that really became a core memory was just like, you can't upset the men. You can't assume that they'll be able to cover it or get that or handle it. Like they are something to take care of. And then, watching my grandmother just obsess over it. And, even I think with my mom, never standing up to her, it's because I think I felt sorry for her. I felt so much pity for this fucking insane woman that I just never wanted to say anything, you know? And, so when this whole thing happened with my friend, and this wasn't the first time a friend really fell off, I really had to just stop myself and say, like, you can't. Do what grandma did with dad. You can't perpetuate that that shit. He is your best friend, and that is true. But you have a problem with people pleasing and sacrificing yourself to the point of you will destroy yourself for the freedom to try to help someone who doesn't want to fucking be helped, doesn't isn't going to do the same for you, you know what I mean? Like, even still, like, you wouldn't ask for that. Like, this isn't an okay thing to ask in a friendship, even though he wasn't asking. But you know what I mean? And that chunk of shadow work or self reflection, the deep dive introspectively to just really be like, where is this fucking pattern coming from? Like, where does this automatic behavior, like, what does it stem from? Because I know rationally, I can't just quit my job and throw my two old dogs and my tiny ass Subaru and drive 1,500 miles just to get to the border of California. Like, I was just like, we are being so irrational. And to just catch yourself, to just see that behavior and be like, people pleasing does not serve us anymore. And I know, like, if my friend was in his right mind, if he was healthy and on his medication, he would not want me to just throw away my life because he doesn't have to work. He has no bills. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He gets disability, VA, this, that. He gets all this money. So he can just fuck off and do whatever he wants. I have dogs. I have a car bill. Like, I don't want to just throw everything up in the air and just say fuck it. Like, I've worked very hard for what I've had. And that there's that a little bit of, my next point. But give me 1 second. How much of what you do is toxic? What are you doing that is perpetuating the bad shit that you've tried to escape from? What promises that you make to yourself do you keep breaking? Why? Right? Like, all these prompts, all these shadow work things to think about. You have to take responsibility for the role you play in your own life, for the part you play in your own suffering. And I knew that if I gave in to my impulse, my people pleasing impulse to just go find my friend and say, fuck it, friendships forever, that's my brother, I have no family, I need to get him. I knew that I would be fucking myself up in a really big way. And it wasn't worth it. Like, he was my best friend, but I made a life that I wanted to hold on to, and both these things can be true at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other, and you don't have to feel guilty for wanting to hold on to your life that you've made, you know? And you know, maybe I was a really bad friend to Zycal and he wanted to get away from me. Like, whatever happened, I can't control it. And I think with people pleasing also comes this hidden, sneaky ass little, like a Crunchwrap Supreme, all the fucking layers and it's all amalgamated together, but like the ingredients are shit, so you do get like a fine line of termination between the layers. Sorry, I forgot what I was about to say, but I had a good point. Ah, the layers in between. What the fuck? Shit, I'm sorry. But you gotta take responsibility for the role you play in your own suffering. Yeah. I needed to really see if, and it's possible, like maybe I was just a really bad friend to Zycal and he needed to leave. And, maybe I was toxic in some ways. Maybe I had my internal turmoil spilling over and I just didn't realize it and it was affecting him. Like we might be blind to how we really do might choose suffering or chaos because it's familiar. We might allow ourselves to fall into bad habits because it's easier, right? But, ugh, what of me do I need to work on? I don't need to work on other people. I need to work on myself, right? Sometimes I also think like, well, I don't think I feel like I know, but toxic people don't necessarily always know that they're toxic, especially if they're narcissistic. Right, that's what I was saying. So, with people pleasing, there is this hidden layer of, I think, being a control freak. That just came back to me, sorry. And I don't think we really realize it, but as a people pleaser or as someone who is feeding dialogue to get a certain response, who is just on autopilot and your automatic responses or behaviors are just to minimize eyes on you and to go under the radar and say nothing of any personality, you don't respond to anything authentically. I think there's a layer of control because you're trying to produce certain outcomes. And again, it's because it's a survival technique. It's a behavior that you needed as a child or when you were really going through the thick of it, but it's not serving you now. You need to show up authentically. And that control, letting go of fawning, people pleasing, feeding people your automatic, predetermined responses. That's not showing up authentically and that's not being genuine. But it's really, really hard to be genuine and authentic when you feel safest being hyper vigilant of nonverbals and reacting. Like that's and I know for a fact I used to do that all the time. But that was one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was how we might not see how we are toxic or how we are perpetuating the toxicity that we're trying to escape from or heal from. I don't want to be like my grandma or my dad or my mom or any of these other fuckers that have traumatized me in my life. And not being genuine is a core, you know, it's a common denominator. Like they all were not genuine. They were all just playing this part of, whatever it was. And I was doing the same thing. I was not genuine for maybe the first 25, 26, 27 years of my life. I was just always trying to react in a way to get certain reactions. And, if I tried to produce a day or a situation and it didn't go that way, it would ruin my mood. I would be so upset. I'd be so stressed because you just want control. And I think it's a very valid one, especially after living through lots of instability. You want to be in control to provide yourself stability, but that's not really real life. Real life is lots of variables, lots of things. You're not in control. Control is an illusion, like we've all heard. Um, and that was something about my codependency story. My codependency recovery was really, thrown into like a serious hyperdrive when Zycal went missing and I lost the apartment and I really felt like, he knew not my life story, but he knew me since for like almost 20 years, like he knew everything about me. He knew the living relatives, the few ones that are out there, like he knew them. He grew up with me. He knew all of our mutual friends, the stories behind them, what happened to them. And when he went missing, it almost really felt like my history went missing, like a living encyclopedia, a validation that I exist and the things that I went through happened, because I'm always doubting myself and I always minimize what happened. And Zykel, even though he's schizophrenic, right? And he's been unmedicated, he gave me such truthful insight, and I think it's because he was involuntary hospitalized, psychiatric hospitalization so many times, that he got such great advice and like such actual therapy that like when he'd get out, he's like, "Oh my God, guess what I learned?" And I'm like, "Cognitive behavioral therapy, let's go!" Like, oh my God, get out of here. But when he went missing and I'm in, just I felt like that was the last living person from a culture, like the culture of my, the background lore. Like he was the last living character from that storyline, and he just got killed off, more or less. And I was just like, then I felt like, the last of the species almost. I was like, nobody knows my grandpa. Like, nope, that's it. Nobody has any idea what kind of person my dad is, or how much fun Jessica was, or whatever the fuck, right? And I remember once I had to drop out of college, right? And I was so upset about that. I was just like, my identity was a student. When I made my dating profiles, I put that, oh, I'm a student. Credit card applications, apartment applications, questionnaires. What is your occupation? Oh, I'm a student. I even, I loved being a student. I loved going to class. I loved saying that. Like, oh yeah, I'm studying for this degree. Like, oh yeah, like I'm on the dean's list. I was a fucking, I don't know. I don't know. I hated school in grade school, but in college I loved school. I really did. And so when I had to drop out, I felt so ashamed. I felt like such a loser. And I felt like I lost part of my identity. Like, I can't say I'm a student anymore. That's a lie if I say that. And like, I'm not a student anymore. I'm not going to school. I'm just working. Like, my schooling is done, right? And that was really hard for me. Honestly, it took me, a while to like really be able to say that out loud. Like, yeah, I'm not going to school anymore. Like, yeah, I dropped out. No, yeah, fuck school. I can't do it anymore. I'm just too broke and I'm too burnt out, and I give up, and it's my last semester and I fucking give up, and I don't fucking care because I can't afford it, and I just don't care anymore. And that's the truth. And it took me maybe a year before I could even say that to anyone like out loud. I would get so upset when people like, "Oh, did you go to school? Do you have a degree?" And it's just like, I just don't even talk to me about it. It was painful because of all the work that I put into it. And then even dumber, I had a car insurance. No, it was my cell phone number. I had a New York cell phone number, and then when I moved to Idaho, my phone broke and I had to get like an Idaho number. And I was just like, my area code isn't going to be 845 anymore. Oh, how will people know that I'm not from out here? They have to see my license plate to know that I'm from New York? Stupid. It's iconography. How much of our identity is placed in things that aren't even us, that aren't even our characteristics? What do we look at to represent us? Apparently, me going to school, so student loans and an area code. That's what comprised me in, my 20s, I guess, right? Or like, I don't know. There's so many examples. Or, like I have my car still has my New York plates, and it's stupid because now I think about it, it's like I've traveled and moved around the country so many times. Like license plates, phone numbers, even driver's licenses, you could get one in any state so easily. Like it doesn't matter. And like anyone could look at my car or my area code and can assume where I'm from, but like that might not be the case because my driver's license is from Idaho also. So I get asked a lot, like, "Oh, you from Idaho?" And it's like, dude, that's a loaded question. I don't even want to tell you where I'm from because fuck you, you know? So the fact that back then I put so much stock into those things to portray me, right? I looked at my friend, my human friend, Zycal, and I saw him as almost a catalog or a museum of my existence, you know? So to lose those things, for Zygal to just basically fall off the earth and die, I honestly don't know what happened. To this day, I don't fucking know. I have no idea. Um, it really made me think, how much of my identity is tethered in other things, like other people, actual items, the assumption that I'm making that other people are assuming, right? And then it can get even more fucked up, like how much of my trauma makes up my identity? How much of me, the outward me, the me that my coworkers see, the me that people see at a grocery store, at a club, driving in my car, whatever, how much of that is actually me versus the me that has been masking due to trauma or holding on to how certain things make me feel. For example, right? Like, hold on. So, like, a lot of people have relationships with their parents. It's a totally normal thing. And some people have rocky relationships with their parents. Also totally normal. I have this one coworker who her dad sends her flowers like on her birthday, on random holidays, and he like gives her a card with them. But like apparently like that's the only time she hears from him, and like she's always talking like shit in the office, like more flowers from my dad. My God, well, I don't care. Or whatever. Like I can't even listen to it half the time. But it makes me want to say, like, well, I don't even, yeah, my dad is a drug addict living under a bridge. You get flowers, yeah, right? Which is valid. Those are like feelings that I have that are valid. Like, people talking about their parents does trigger me. And it's up to me to learn to adapt or be better to react to those stressors or triggers so they don't stress me or trigger me, right? So instead of getting involved in that little conversation, that girly little powwow at the water cooler thingy, I just like don't interact because I'm I'm bothered. Like I think she's being so like dumb and so like, pedantic, and it's just like that's so benign. Like I don't even want to hear that. Like I can't listen to that. Like it's so stupid. And how much of my identity is being butthurt about my daddy issues? And I know that's like a mean way to say it, but it's keeping me from just having light-hearted, silly chats with girls that I would love to be friends with. That bitterness and that thought of just like, well, nee, 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 ah, nya, nya, like, Why is that so so important to me? Why is me expressing that I have it worse or that whatever it is, and like we're just talking and we're just being open and honest, authentically searching, and we're doing it without shame or judgment, right? So I'm not being mean to myself. I'm just talking like I would talk to a friend. And that's why, like, sometimes I encourage people to get mirrors or, reflections so you can look at yourself and talk to yourself when you do shadow work or when, like, you're just, wandering consciously in your subconscious because you're talking, like, you're your friend, you're your homie. Love yourself. Look how beautiful you are. Look at you. So like I'm just talking to myself as if I was sitting in front of myself and we're friends, we're having a glass of wine after work and we're just talking. It's all with love. So that being said, like how much of my identity is rooted and all of the things I jump to talk about is themed around the hurt, the trauma, or the unworked wounds, you know what I mean? Or like even if like you're feeling really shitty about it, maybe I could have just like walked up to them and be like, "Yeah, your dad sucks." Like we could really, like I said earlier, just grab the narrative and just it's up to us, right? So it really, especially when I catch myself being self-conscious or like stopping myself from doing things, it's like, what is making you feel more comfortable in that? Like, why is that part of the identity you've created, the fawning, the hiding, the don't look at me, I don't want anyone to see me, I'm scared of saying the wrong thing? Like, why is that what we're leading with when we don't want to be that? Where is that coming from? What behaviors did that stem from? What were we trying to avoid by doing that? And then that's how I feel like that ties into the identity we also forge. I'm really afraid of upsetting anyone because my grandparents would punish me if I said something to my dad and he didn't like it because he felt insecure because he really was a deadbeat. So I don't say anything. And why is my identity still stuck in that? You know, how much of our identity is allowing ourselves to be stagnant in that time period or in that dysfunction? And I think it's because it's familiar and there's ease in familiarity, there's comfort in routine, even if it's bad for us, if it's what we're used to, we might choose it easier, quicker, subconsciously. And I think shadow work at least is just grabbing that and like I said, just change that narrative. Just look at yourself openly and honestly and just be like, what is going on inside? Let's make a safe place for we us to just open up and let it out, turn inside out, and just see what we're working with. I I think too when my grandparents were dying, because I was asked once, like, "Oh, how come your grandfather won't snap out of it?" Meaning, like, his enabling with his son, my dad. And I really said, I was like, I think if he admitted that he was wrong, he wouldn't be able to cope with it. Meaning, I think my grandfather's entire life, his entire life since my dad was 13 until my grandfather died on the floor, his literal entire adult life, my grandfather was just acting out the identity that his trauma gave him. Like I don't know if I'm explaining it right either, but like I look at the life grandpa led and it's just like this was just a byproduct of everything you've gone through and your inability to even recognize it. Like I don't know. I really do think grandpa just couldn't. I don't think he was able to, because it really did mean that his son was going to just die horribly and nobody was going to help. And grandpa really did waste his life and he fucked over his daughter really bad and he destroyed the family. And I think grandpa just, mm, because I think it had a lot to do with his two brothers dying and his mom dying. I think, like the trauma really warped his identity and he wasn't able to differentiate them. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be led by the things that have happened to me when I was younger, or I don't want to be, choreographed by people who are no longer in my life, and I don't want them in my life. I don't want their influence. I don't want their residue. Nothing. I want to be my own genuine person, and I gotta allow the ego death. I have to really look at myself and ask myself these hard questions and still be nice to myself. Catch yourself breaking these patterns is a really, really substantial thing. Even if you don't break it all the way, just catching yourself is, it's powerful. What you're doing is powerful. And, joining me once a week, twice a week, once every month, whatever it is, like that's also an hour in the shadow work bank. You did an hour of work, you know what I mean? And I'm proud of you. I'm also proud of you for listening to me ramble. I don't know if anything I said made any sense whatsoever. I think I formed a couple of coherent thoughts. I'm so sorry if I didn't. Um, but yeah, the salt circle. This is where, we come together, we galvanize ourselves in a place that is safe and without judgment. And we amplify our inner power, our inner energy while we go on this transformative journey of shadow work and self sorcery. And again, I'm so proud of you. Thank you guys for hanging out and joining. And, I want to see if anyone commented really quickly. So please bear with me, okay? Let me just click around over here as I click on the wrong thing. 1 second. Oh, wow, we have so many comments. Okay, give me 1 second, my friends. Oh, oh, you guys are so sweet. Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Cabby, you're so sweet. Aw. Slime love, you get it. It's practice and it's hard work, just like going to the gym or learning the guitar. It's not going to just be you do it once for a half hour and that's it, you're done. It's literally discipline and routine and choosing to do it, and you're going to get better, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, even if it's just once a day. You really are capable of doing that. I really do appreciate the comments. I really, really do. Keep them coming. Like I said, my name is Daniela. I'm your host. And, we gather Mondays and Wednesdays. So on Wednesday, we'll have another episode about death, dying, and bereavement. And, if you would like me to talk about anything in particular about those topics, please send me a message or you can send me a comment on any one of my videos and I'll definitely respond. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything you want to learn about or talk about or even share. I'll totally open up the floor to you if that's something you want. We also have a Discord channel that I'm trying to get up and running, but it looks like scrambled eggs on the floor, so don't worry about it. So I'm gonna get ready to sign off. And like I do in the beginning of the stream, I like to work on really just grounding myself. Shadow work is intense and it can be really tiring and obnoxious. So just taking a bunch of deep breaths, feeling all of your muscles, letting them all relax, not being tense, loosening up your jaw, letting your neck feel free, getting these shoulders down and feeling the air go in and out of your lungs, expanding your rib cage. Feel your feet or your ass on the floor. Feel the weight of yourself. Listen to all the bugs, you know? Grounding yourself, I think, is really important, especially when you have a dysregulated nervous system, which we will talk about eventually. But I'm going to play a song that you can find on the lo-fi hip hop playlist. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. Let's just hang out for a minute and ground and breathe and decompress.